Hi everyone, welcome to IS Writing 7 Plus class offered by There Is No Magic. Today we're gonna begin our lesson 1, which is IS Writing Basics and High Score Strategies. Now, time to dive in. In the first part, I'm going to introduce myself to you a little bit more and also go through the class schedule together. Then you can have a good understanding of what are going to be covered in the class and what resources and materials are available to you. Let's begin with some of my self-introduction, and I will let you know why I am qualified to teach you IS writing here. My name is Chao Yi, and I received my MBA from Babson College in 2018. Then I joined There's No Magic in the same year. I met Rio, the founder of There's No Magic, when we were both doing our MBA at Babson College. In fact, we lived in the same building and we were very good neighbors at that time. Because we shared the same goal of teaching Asian students English, we decided to work together. In the past, I have lived in the United States for like 5 years and I did 2 master's degrees there. Recently, my family has moved to Canada and I think we are going to live here for a very long time. Now let's talk a little bit about my qualifications of teaching IS writing. To begin with, I scored Band 8 in the IS exam with around 1 month's preparation and I got 7.5 in writing. I also took the TOEFL exam in the past before I started my MBA. In that exam, I got 107 in total, with 27 in writing out of the total points 30. Because I was able to use the right strategies to achieve high score in a short period of time, I leveraged my experience and developed the IELTS speaking, TOEFL writing, and listening courses for There's No Magic. This means I have been working with Japanese students since 2018. And I understand their characteristics in English learning quite well as their strengths and weaknesses. And that is also why you are going to see some students writing samples from my previous students in this class. By doing so, I hope you can get a good understanding of the common mistakes and weaknesses that may appear in an essay, and avoid doing the same in your essay. Let's take a look at our class schedule. For Task 2 essay writing, we will have 7 classes in total. Among the 7 classes, we will use 5 classes to cover different types of essay questions. In those classes, you will learn how to analyze those essay questions, how to come up with ideas, what logical structures should you use, what are the good vocabularies or phrases for those topics. Besides, we will also provide you essay samples, including high score essay samples, as well as students' essays. By leveraging those essay samples, you will get a good idea of what a good essay looks like, how to build a good essay by yourself, as well as the common mistakes students often make when they are writing the essay. Therefore, you can avoid those mistakes in your essay. After each class, we will provide you an assignment. The purpose of those assignments are to reinforce what we taught in the class, as well as to evaluate your writing abilities in detail. You can use essay editing services for your assignments, or you can choose questions by yourself, especially those difficult questions, those you are not confident to write. It will be a good idea to try to write those difficult questions by yourself and then request for essay editing service. During each essay editing service, I will go through your essay sentence by sentence, and I will comment on your task response, your vocabulary, your grammar, as well as the logic you applied in your essay. By receiving the feedback, you shall have a clear idea of what you did good in your essay, what you didn't do so well, and how to improve in the future. Another important feature of our class is that all the essay questions we covered in the class material, assignments, as well as the samples are based on real IELTS exam questions. By doing so, you will build a comprehensive understanding of how real IELTS exam questions look like, what questions you might encounter in your real exam, as well as the difficulty levels in the past years. If you have questions about how difficult the questions can be, what are the topics usually associated with the difficult questions, you should definitely take a look at this class because discussing the difficulty questions is also a focus of our lesson. Now let's move on to part 2, IS Writing Basics. It's time to actually take a look at the IS writing. Stay focused and let's take a look. To begin, we will take a look at the statistics released by official IELTS organization. This chart we have in front of you is going to help you understand the IELTS scores among Japanese speakers. This chart is separated in different rows by first language. So let's go down to the language Japanese and take a look. I have put a red box over there, so it should be easy for you to find the row. I know many of you who are currently listening to this class are aiming to get into the top universities in Western countries. Among those universities, most of them will require you to get an overall 6.5 in IELTS exam. For business schools, it will be more competitive. That means it is better for you to get around 7 to 7.5 in order to better secure your admission to those schools. So the question is it hard to get those scores? How many Japanese students could get 7 or even 7.5? The answer is in this chart. Let's take a look at the numbers inside the red box. According to the statistics, we can see around 15% of the Japanese students who took the IELTS exam could get 6.5, while 8% of the Japanese students got 7 and 3% of the students got 7.5. Based on this, I would say getting 6.5 is feasible as long as you work hard. However, getting 7 or 7.5 as an overall score could be challenging because you are supposed to be around top 10% of the English users among the Japanese students who took the IELTS exam. While in order to get a 7.5, you are supposed to be the top 4% of the English users among Japanese students, which might be hard to reach for many. Regarding to this situation, it will be critical for students to find a right strategy to improve their scores. This implies students should leverage their strengths to get better score in the sections they are good at and use the right way to improve the sections they are not good at. So what are the sections that Japanese students really need to focus on improving? Let's take a look at the next statistics. The title of this chart is called Academic Mean Performance by Nationality, which means it will show you the average score regarding different sections as well as the overall score for different nations. I have put 3 boxes there for easy comparison. The 3 countries I have highlighted are Canada, Japan, and Malaysia. We are going to compare them to find out what are the most difficult sections to improve. Where should we put more energy or time? The reason I chose Canada and Malaysia as the countries to compare with Japan is because English is used as an official language in both of those 2 countries. By studying those 2 countries, you will know if you get the opportunity to be more exposed to English language, like use it more often, speak it more frequently, what will be the changes to your overall scores? Throughout the chart, you can find out that for nearly all the countries listed in this chart, writing always gets the lowest score among 4 sections during the IS test. This means writing is definitely the most difficult section during an IELTS test. That is why you should learn about the IELTS writing. Try to understand how to use the right strategy to conquer such a difficult task. Writing is not only difficult for the students whose native language is not English. It is also difficult for the people who speak English as an official language in their country. Let's take a look at Canada and Malaysia. On average, students in those two countries get 6.1 in their writing, which is the highest score among all the countries in this chart. If students who live in English-speaking countries can only get 6.1 as their average writing score during IELTS test, it is not surprising to see many Asian students struggle to get above 6 or 6.5 or even 7 in their writing. However, it doesn't mean it is impossible for Asian students to achieve 6.5 or even 7. Personally, I scored 7 in IELTS writing at first attempt to take the IELTS test. And later I studied more, which helped me to improve my score from 7 to 7.5. Meanwhile, I've also seen many of my Asian students, they improved their score from 5.5 to 6.5 or even 7. So getting a high score is totally possible, as long as you acquire the right strategies to tackle the task, and willing to work hard. Since we just talked about to work hard, we are going to take a look at how hard should we work. We already know that IELTS writing is the most difficult part. Most students have trouble to get 7. Even those who live in Western countries where English is the major language. And 50% of Japanese students haven't reached 6 yet, based on the average is 5.5 in the previous chart for writing. If I were you, at this moment, I'm going to think, how many hours should I really devote in IELTS writing in order to improve the score to the band I would like to have? The answer is already provided by British Council, which is the official IELTS organization. It says it takes around 200 hours of course study for a person to improve their band score by 1. Since IELTS writing is the most difficult section, I will assume this section is going to take roughly 50% of the course study time. That makes 100 hours to improve your IELTS writing score by 1. You probably know that in order to improve your overall band by 1, on average, you need to improve each of the 4 sections by 1. Because the overall band is calculated by each band you get for that 4 sections, add them together, and then divide that number by 4. Like many other Asian students, Japanese students usually perform better in the listening and reading sections, which means there might be less room for you to improve regarding to those 2 sections, since your score might already be higher than 7 or even 8. In this case, you should devote more time on the writing and speaking sections, because the improvement of your overall band is largely dependent on the improvement you made to the writing and speaking sections. Even though improving the speaking section is also not easy for most of the Asian students, it may take a lot of time, I will still suggest you to put more time on writing. That is because once you find the right strategy, it will be easier to improve writing than speaking. After talking about why IELTS writing is important to us, we are going to start our actual teaching from now on. First, let's take a look at the academic writing during the IELTS exam. The academic writing usually gives you 60 minutes. Within the 60 minutes, there are 2 tasks to be addressed. Usually we call it task 1 writing and task 2 writing. For task 1 writing, it is usually asking you to write a short report, around 150 words. That is roughly 10 to 15 sentences. And the score you get for task 1 will account for 1/3 of the total score you get for the writing section. And there's also a task 2, which is an essay. It asks you to write 250 words. That will be roughly 20 to 25 sentences. And the score you get for task 2 will account for 2/3 of the total score you get for writing. Ideally, it should take you 20 minutes for task 1, and you should write around 150 to 220 words. Please keep in your mind that there's no point to write a long essay. As you know, a long essay usually takes longer time to finish. If you spend too much time on task 1, you might run out of time when you are addressing the task 2. As you know, the task 2 is more difficult because it is an essay. It wants more detail. Therefore, you have to ensure at least you have 40 minutes for task 2 writing. And also, there's no point to write a long essay for task 2. Just keep in your mind that the length of your essay is not going to help you to get a better score. It doesn't mean the longer your essay is, the better your score is. So keep this in your mind and plan your time wisely during the exam. Now let's move on and take a look at some samples for task 1 and task 2 writing. Here are 2 question samples for task 1 writing. So task 1 writing usually asks you to write a report based on the data presented in those charts. There might be bar chart, might be line chart, or sometimes just numbers. So we usually call those things diagrams. Those are the typical task 1 essay questions. If you encounter such questions in your task 1 writing, it is most important for you to figure out the trends and relationships that are presented through the data. For detailed strategies and language training for task 1 writing, we will cover it in our task 1 writing lessons, which will be a separate course. Let's move on to take a look at the infrequent questions you might meet during task 1 writing. Most of the students hate to meet those questions in task 1 writing because they are usually more difficult to write. One common type we often meet is on the left side. It looks like a map, so we usually call that type of question map questions. Map questions might ask you to describe the location or how to go somewhere, or even talk about some features based on that map. So that's something students really hate to do. And on the right side is a less common type of question, but doesn't mean you won't meet it in your exam because anything can happen. This one is more about the process. It usually describes a process of something. Then the essay question will ask you to write down and explain the process in detail. So this one I think is equally difficult to the map questions. For some students, this type of essay question, the process one seems even more difficult. Some students consider it to be the most difficult one to write. So when you are preparing for the task 1 essay, be sure to write every type of essay questions so as to be prepared. Now let's take a look at task 2 question samples. Task 2 writing looks more like what writing should be. In those questions, background, topics, or other people's views are usually provided. It will ask you to discuss those views or those topics and then give your own opinions. That is the most common type of question, like this one on the left. In a number of countries, some people think it is necessary to spend large sums of money on constructing new railway lines for very fast trains between cities. Others believe the money should be spent on improving existing public transport. Discuss both these views and give your opinion. Meanwhile, there are also other types of task 2 questions, such as asking you about the cause of an issue, why this issue happened, what are the solutions to address this issue. In addition, there are also questions asking you about the advantage and disadvantage of something. Those are all the basic types of task 2 questions. In my opinion, all the task 2 essay question types are common. There's no less common ones, so you'd better be prepared.